It's time for a special All-Star Game edition of the Blackhawks Insider podcast. Hello and welcome to Blackhawks Insider, the official podcast of the Chicago Blackhawks, presented by ChevyDriveChicago.com. Drive what Kane and Taves drive. Seth Jones is the Blackhawks representative at the 2023 NHL All-Star Game, so of course he's our guest on this week's podcast episode. Seth has had a fabulous NHL career and has made his first NHL All-Star Game as a member of the Blackhawks. We've got our take on the All-Star Game as well, and of course, Sellies and Chirps. So stick around, you won't want to miss it. This is once again the Blackhawks Insider Podcast, presented by ChevyDriveChicago.com. Drive what Kane and Taves drive. Well, every Blackhawks Insider Podcast is like an all-star episode for me because I've got two all-star co-hosts, Colby Cohen and Kaylee Chelios. Hello. You guys are all-stars in my book. Okay, I have to admit, the Smash Mouth song has been playing in my head all week. Okay, anyways, All-Star Game. Look, this is really an exciting time on the NHL calendar for me. Again, I'm going through my first full NHL season. And candidly, NHL All-Star Week is something that I've always been aware of is going on, but it's always on the periphery for me in terms of other early February sporting events. But I think compared to the other three North American pro sports leagues, the NHL All-Star Game is very unique in terms of its structure and some of the events that they have going on prior to the All-Star Game. So as people who have been in and around the game much longer than I have, what do you think of the NHL All-Star Game and week-long experience? Kaylee, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I was there last season, and it was a lot of fun. Obviously, as a kid, it's cool just being around the best of the best, and it's changed a lot in the format, but just seeing all those players together for the first time in one locker room and watching them interact with each other, because some of them are big fans of each other, is probably like the most exciting. For me, I like the fastest skater competition, even though it gives me like a heart attack that McDavid and a lot of players, I think Braden Point was the only player I saw wear a helmet, which I thought was wild during that competition. And then I like the hardest shot, Shea Weber, Chara in the past. So there's individual things I love about it. And then just overall, last year what stood out to me was just Brady Tkachuk's face. He was so young and just so excited to be there and be on a stage with like Hall of Famers and future Hall of Famers, really. It's cool. So the whole event is just more so, for me, not about the game. That's not as exciting as like the individual performances and just the reactions of seeing the best players in the world come together and kind of be in awe of each other a little bit in the locker room.
I just have these memories of being a kid and seeing these things happen. And I remember they used to give a car to whoever got the MVP. They might actually still do that, but I think it was a bigger deal for whatever reason back then. So, it's changed. It's 3-on-3 now. I think the skills competition is a little more, entertainment and like less competitive than it probably used to be. But I think the skill level is so much higher now that I think, some of the skill drills that are old All-Star Game drills are probably things guys do in practice every day now, like no big deal. But ultimately it's all about the fans and them having an opportunity to see these people come together, the best in the world. So I think it's great for the league. And, I look forward to seeing how they kind of continue to modernize it in the coming years.
Yeah, and it's interesting comparing the skills competition to some of the other All-Star Game prelude events in other pro sports. You think of the home run derby in baseball. You think of the slam dunk competition in basketball. I think the skills competition is a cool way for hockey to show the incredible athleticism and hand-eye coordination and speed and agility that exists in the game. It's interesting that you mentioned the MVP getting a car at one point, because that creates certainly a drive to play for something. Baseball, once upon a time, the All-Star Game, actually not that long ago, the All-Star Game determined who had home field advantage in the World Series. I mean, would you improve anything or tweak anything about the way the All-Star Game or All-Star Week is currently structured, Colby? I mean, would you dangle, even an even larger carrot out there to really add some weight to the outcome of the game?
It's interesting that you asked that, because part of me would say I think that what baseball did was such a great idea, and I actually do like what baseball used to do, and I'm thinking, well, could that work for hockey? And I do think the team that has the best overall record means they probably have the best overall record against the other conference, their own division, and their own conference, so they kind of deserve that home ice. But I do think there's probably a way to try to make it a little more competitive, but I don't really have the answer to that question. I think they made it 3-on-3. They put $1 million as the purse, that gets split up amongst the players. Which, look, I think that was it 9 or 10 guys on each team or something like that, and so. I think they're constantly looking for ways. I usually am chomping at the bit to voice sort of my opinion on how or what we could try to do to improve. But it's tricky because you want guys to be healthy, and it's supposed to be a fun event, right, Kaylee? I mean, it's a lot of it has to do with family and friends, but I don't really know, and nothing that I feel like is in my mind could really make it better, although it is something that I've thought about.
Yeah, I'm with you too. I mean, it's constantly evolving. They're changing the rules, trying to make it more family friendly. Really, it's about getting people who aren't necessarily hockey fans into the sport. It's about giving young fans an opportunity to see the best players in the world come together and enjoy that. So I like it. I think there's always room for growth, and the actual game itself maybe isn't that competitive, but I think it'd be hard to throw in that element, like Colby said, with the fact that players are banged up. It's a tough point of the season. It's supposed to be fun and a little bit more lighthearted. So I think more fun stuff like the purse or the car, things like that fans can get into too, would make it a little bit more compelling, but it would be hard to put that sort of pressure on players at that point in the season at an event like that.
Well, if nothing else, it is a great exposition of the best talent in the National Hockey League, and the players have their guards down a little bit too, which is neat to see. They've got their families, their kids, friends in attendance, and it's a really fun week to witness either in person or through a media perspective. We got to sit down with the Blackhawks 2023 All-Star representative, Seth Jones, and our conversation went in all kinds of different directions. Certainly started out with the All-Star week coming up, but also ventured into some places off the ice as well. So a really enjoyable conversation with Blackhawks All-Star Seth Jones starts now. Seth, thanks so much for catching up with us on the Blackhawks Insider podcast. And once again, congratulations on another All-Star appearance to pad your resume. And most importantly, you're first with the Blackhawks. Again, you've made All-Star games before, made All-Star teams before, but where were you when you found out about this All-Star appearance, and how did you find out?
I was actually at the rink. We had a meeting before practice. What was that, maybe a couple weeks ago now? And then at the end of the meeting, Luke told everyone that he's got to tell us something, and that's when I found out. So I found out with everyone else on the team, and it was a pretty cool moment.
Seth, you've been there before. It's not your first time, but it's always pretty exciting being around some of the best players around the National Hockey League. And what is the experience like for you? What's something you watched growing up about the All-Star games, and then when you got to participate, what was your favorite part about going?
Yeah, All-Star has a cool aura, obviously, about it. Growing up watching All-Star Game, it was, East versus West still. And it didn't have to be a player from each team. So, one of the crazy memories was when I think it was fan vote everyone was. and the Blackhawks, I don't know what year it was, but it was right in the midst of the Cups. It was Kane, Taves, Hossa, Seabrook, Keith, and then Crawford and Net was starting for the West. So, I understand why they're doing the player from each team now, but that was kind of a cool moment that I remember from growing up watching the All-Star games. But yeah, I mean, it's a joy to go. It's such a blast going to play with the best players in the world there, and the best players in our league. So, my first one was in LA, and that was the 100th anniversary of the NHL. So that was a pretty cool experience for me, with all the great players there that weekend. Got to meet them all, and so that was pretty special. But I'm happy that I'm going back again, and it should be a lot of fun down in Florida.
Well, then I'm going to have to ask you, who in the All-Star game are you most looking forward to having to play with instead of having to go against, especially teams in our division that we see all the time?
Yeah, I think I saw last night that McKinnon and Rantanen are also going, at Hellebuck, I think, for our division. But, I mean, playing with Makar and those guys, it's, especially Robertson as well there in Dallas. He's having a heck of a year. So I'm very excited to play, be on the same team as these guys instead of trying to defend them every night.
Any buddies on the All-Star team? It's an event for family and friends as well. Anybody, either teammates, opponents in the All-Star game, or family members that you're looking forward to hanging out with down there?
Yeah, my mom will be down there. Grandma will be down there. They've been to every All-Star game I've been to, so they always make that trip. They wouldn't miss it. So I'll get to hang out with them a little bit when I'm not, doing all the media stuff for the game All-Star weekend. But player-wise, I've actually got really close with McKinnon, because we kind of went through that draft year together and did a lot of media stuff together. So, I've kept in touch with him over the years, and we're still pretty good buddies. So I'm excited to see him.
How often do you hear from Grandma during the season? I mean, is she texting you after every game?
No, she's not texting me after every game. I'll get the random. She's got Instagram now, so yeah, that's interesting. But she'll send me the random. Oh yeah, she'll send me the random funny post or meme or something like that on Instagram, which is always a joy. I usually put the smile on my face when I see that.
My grandma always texts me after every Blackhawks game because she listens to all the radios. But you have some incredible women in your life. I love following your mom on Instagram. She's like the ultimate boy mom. Very entertaining, very fun. Yeah. The story about her putting on Jenny from the Block to try to toughen you up and pump you in the games is epic. So do you still listen to Jenny from the Block? And what's the relationship like with your mom now?
I do not listen to Jenny on the Block still. She would do all kind of things to try to get not only me but my two other brothers going for games, and whether it was beating us up in the room or hitting us and making trying to get us pumped up and riled up, or jamming out in the car on the way to the game. We're kids and we're just embarrassed, so. But she always did that stuff. We're really close still to this day. She's always texting me. She's Coach Jones, she's always texting me something after the game that she thinks I can do better, and sometimes I look at it, sometimes I don't. So
I still listen to Jenny from the Block for what it's worth.
Well, Chris, that doesn't surprise any of us. Don't worry, Chris. But you're a coach's kid too, because your father obviously is an NBA coach, former NBA player. And you kind of took my last question with your last answer. So what I was really wanting to know is, you've got a father who's a professional sports coach and professional player. You got a mom who you're telling us you're very close with. We follow her on social media. She's obviously incredibly invested.
Sorry for that too.
Oh, well, you know what? I think that your mom is your biggest fan, and I think it's I think it's cool how invested she is, and who is the hardest coach growing up for you and Caleb? I mean, we'll get into Caleb, but was your dad, was it your mom, or was it grandma that was really laying down the law if you didn't play a good game, or maybe they felt like you didn't work hard enough in a practice or a workout?
Yeah, definitely my mom, I would say. She if she didn't see the work ethic there, it was the car ride home wasn't fun. Let's put it that way. Yeah, some tears maybe rolling down the face on the way home.
Love
No,
it.
but it was yeah, exactly. It was a tough love. Both my parents, pretty strict household growing up. Three boys in the house. You kind of had to be. We were running wild all the time. Who knows what we were doing, fighting and doing crazy stuff. So we needed that discipline in our lives growing up, and they made sure to put it in there.
Well, I promise you that I can totally relate to always being a little more nervous when mom didn't think I played well. So I can relate to that. I fully can relate to that. I don't know about you, Chris, but certainly how it was in the Cohen household.
Well, I was certainly never an athlete at a high level, but no one knows you better than mom, for better or for worse. But Seth, does she have when you were playing for Columbus and Caleb was playing for Edmonton? Did your mom get one of those jerseys of both of your jerseys put together so that when she watched Columbus play Edmonton, it was like she could support both of you at the same time, literally?
I think she did. I can't remember where she saw. I think someone in Edmonton when she went to go see Caleb play a few years back had a jersey. I don't know what two players that he had on the jersey, but I think she asked a fan during the game there where he got it, and I think he made her one. Made her a half Edmonton, half Columbus jersey, and so that was pretty cool. Actually, I've never seen that before, but she rocked it a couple times.
That's pretty cool. I see that, just whenever, it's a big deal when a mom has got two kids playing in the same game. And so I've seen some creative things done with that. But speaking of your brother, Caleb, what's post game like for you guys? And we can certainly expand this into the conversation of what it's like playing with your brother on the same team at the NHL level, no less. But, game ends, win or lose. I mean, are you checking in with each other or do you give each other space and maybe talk about it, maybe not?
It just depends. I think sometimes, when you lose, we're both in a crappy mood. No one's really saying much. We're not, we just go home and go our separate ways. Sometimes when we lose, we'll call each other and, bicker about something. Who knows? Or when we win, so it just depends if like we're both in the talkative mood after the game or not. I've had a 20-minute calls with them when we both get home, at midnight from the game sometimes just about the game and how we're playing. And sometimes we don't hear from each other. So, it just kind of depends. We like to give it to each other a little bit more about, how we're playing and, turnovers and things like that and how we can be better. So, we like to give it to each other a little bit, about that stuff, but
What did you say to him after that play he made in the Philadelphia game where, I mean, he should have gotten credit for a save. I mean, he was in the crease. He
yeah,
kind of
he
like
should have.
swatted the puck away. What did you say to him after that play? That was amazing.
Yeah, what a glove save that was, huh? I can't remember how the play started, but yeah, I mean, he was down, pad stacked it in the crease. It was pretty impressive in there, and all the boys were loving it on the bench too.
Were you nervous? Did you see the
It's good form.
skate going down on his head too?
Yeah, yeah. I saw it after the highlight. He almost got skate to the head there.
Yeah, that was.
That could have been bad.
Growing up, was he the goalie because he was the younger brother? Like I know in our house, I was the goalie, and then my little brother became the goalie, so I assume Caleb, right?
That's exactly right. Exactly right. He would always put the pads on, and I mean, whether it was mini hockey or on the sport court ever in the backyard, he was always the goalie. He liked it too. He's pretty good at it.
It's the younger brother thing.
Exactly. I'm not getting in there. I want to fire pucks at him.
My sister, I guess she was the goalie too, but she was a lot younger, so whenever the puck came, it was basically we'll play until she cries. She just butterfly, close her eyes, put everything out, and try to make a save. If she cried, you had to quit, otherwise you weren't allowed to quit. But I also
That's usually what happened with us too. So when we're playing, or it usually ended in someone getting mad at someone, someone getting in a fight, and then tears would happen. We were younger, and then playtime was over.
I thought it was interesting your mom wanting to like toughen you up when you were younger, and you kind of thought it wasn't really in your nature to be that, hard-nosed physical player. One of your idols was Nicholas Lidstrom, and you seem to have this like really laid-back, cool personality for what was a wild household growing up with three boys playing hockey together. Where does that come from, and how do you stay so chill?
It just depends on the situation. There's times where I do get pretty riled up and pretty angry, whether it's at myself or the situation. But my dad was his personality is pretty laid back, and my mom was very, up and I'm not gonna say aggressive personality, but a lot more outgoing and things like that.
Outspoken, yeah.
So I think I got my dad's outspoken, yeah. I think I got my dad's side of the personality traits a little bit more with that. And so, I've just been more of a laid back guy and kind of take things as they come, and kind of roll with the punches in that way. But yeah, I mean, on the way to hockey games or hockey practice, it was always trying to get you going, whether it was me or my brothers punching us or pushing us or, acting like we're trying to hit someone or something like that. So it was definitely the game was a little bit more aggressive back then too. We were watching, my favorite player is Lidstrom, but, there were a lot more big physical D-man. Some of the fundamentals I learned back when I was a kid, like putting your stick between guys' legs and twisting them. It's a lot of the stuff you can't do anymore that was kind of portrayed as dirty now. Wasn't really dirty back then, I guess.
Well, I'm glad Kaylee brought up Nick Lindstrom because, there's another guy from that sort of era that I wanted to talk to you about. And, it's a guy that, a lot of hockey players probably between the age of 25 and 35 would say he's their favorite player. I just found out from Patrick Kane's father that, Joe Sakic was his favorite player growing up, and that's why he wore 19. As a kid, I was wearing 19 because of Joe Sakic. You got to actually sort of be in his orbit as a young kid, and at least the story reads, that he kind of and your dad knew each other from both playing in Denver, and he kind of pushed you guys out onto the ice. Joe Sakic was in town a couple weeks ago with the Avs game, and just talking to him after that game in which you guys won and they didn't, have a good game. He never panics, Joe. He's the most calm, cool, collected, seen everything type of guy. And I'm just wondering what kind of influence Joe Sakic has been to you as a kid. Maybe now, do you guys still keep in touch? Is there that sort of mentor or friendship there that still exists today?
I haven't talked to Joe in a long time. But growing up as a kid, he was, a lot of kids' idols in Denver. The team had a great team. A lot of Hall of Famers on that team growing up, and it was an iconic team for a lot of youth hockey kids growing up, and it got a lot of kids pushing to hockey. So, my dad saw him. We obviously wanted to play hockey, and my dad knew nothing about hockey, and neither did my mom. And they saw each other down in the Pepsi Center, and he said, "What do kids need to do to get into hockey?" And he said, "Go skate. The first thing to do is learn how to skate," because I think he knew where the game was going. You see everyone nowadays is such good skaters out there, and the game is so much faster. So I think he saw that coming before a lot of people did, and that's what we did. Took skating lessons for a whole year when I was 5, 6 years old, before I even started playing the game. And I want to say that was a big part of where I am today. So behind the scenes, that was something that skating is probably one of my best attributes as a player, and so I'm thankful for that encounter that happened between my dad and Joe.
It was a figure
Seth,
skater
it's interesting getting your perspective on the...
Oh, sorry, Chris.
Really? I don't think I knew that. A figure skater?
Did I make
It was a figure
up?
skating coach.
Sorry,
Okay, it was a figure skating. The lady was a figure skater, but it was more edge work lessons. Come on, guys.
No toe picks?
No. And
I wasn't taking figure skating
I
lessons.
didn't mean it. I didn't mean it like that. No,
I know.
Figure skaters are great skaters, and
She
the
was.
edge work, as you mentioned.
It was all about like crossovers and backward skating and forward skating and just really the fundamentals on how to skate.
Well, even at the national team, they had a figure
Yeah.
skating coach working with all players. I'm sure you worked with
Mm-hmm.
Carey, Kyle. Not only
I was.
figure skating on the ice, but we used to do that Hayden's figure skating drills off ice.
Yes.
I mean, we had a whole circuit built around figure skating training, you know, in our 16 and 17-year-olds, and you know, it sounds like you guys were doing it as well. So, Chris, it's fairly common, I guess, to have that sort of training, and kind of not surprised to hear it. You know, Jeff Skinner, people say he was a figure skater growing up. There was a little bit of that going on in the Buffalo game the other night when he was flopping all over the rink a little bit on those edges. So I think it's a fairly common thing, and I think that's probably why so many guys can skate like at such a high level at this point.
For sure. And he's one of the most prolific skaters we have. You know, edge work. He kind of reminds me of Kaprizov as well, how they can open their hips and gain speed, and they're very deceptive on their edges, and they're quick. So, you know, it's obviously a handful to handle him every night.
I would just say, too, I've commented figure skating events, announced them before, and, you know, there's an athletic component to figure skating, and there's totally, you know, a poetry on ice and artistic component to hockey, especially when it's played at a high level. So, I think that's really cool. But so that, you know, it's interesting getting your perspective on the game, because you've been in the league for 10 years, but you're only 28. You've got a lot of hockey time ahead of you. You know, what do you, and you've kind of touched on this a little bit already, but I'd love to hear you elaborate just how you see the game has changed over your decade in the NHL, and maybe where you see it's going down the road.
Yeah, when I came in, there weren't many young guys on your team. You know, there may have been one or two 19, 20, 21-year-olds on your team, and then everyone else was, you know, my age now. I'm not going to say old, because I guess 28 to 33. Thanks, guys. I needed that confirmation. So everyone was around their 30s or older, and definitely a different you know, kind of vibe in the locker room with older guys and things like that. And the game was definitely more physical and a little bit slower 10 years ago. And I think probably 5 or 6 years ago, you could just really see the game take off. You could see, you know, I think the main difference for me was the third and fourth lines are now young kids, and they're really fast and really skilled. And any line can score on you, really, now. Where I feel like, you know, 8 years ago, it was really the top two lines mostly doing a lot of the scoring. And then, you know, it was more depth players, third, fourth line. And, you know, there's more fighters and things like that. So that's really the big difference I see. A lot more offensive defensemen as well, I think now. A lot more points getting scored on the back end. You know, the defensemen being the second wave of attack offensively, and even leading the rush a lot of the times now. So those are some big differences I've seen.
Yeah, Peter Mrazek echoed that same sentiment. He said when he first came in the league in 2012, him and two other players were 26, and they were the youngest on the team. So even the defensemen in today's game are really young. For you, I was talking to somebody yesterday who was a defenseman, and he was saying it's actually a lot harder for him to defend against some of those big power forwards or somebody like a McKinnon, as opposed to some of those high-skilled players that can kind of deke and go around you. From your perspective, like who's one of the more difficult players to defend against without the obvious of Connor McDavid, and like how do you feel about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, you answered the question. McDavid is obviously the full package, the hardest to defend. But, you know, there are guys that are maybe not as fast as him, or their hands aren't as fast, but they're big physical guys. You know, one of the hardest, the D always talk about it when we play Minnesota, one of the hardest lines to defend in the league, in our opinion, is Eriksson, Greenway, and Foligno in Minnesota. They're big players. They're physical. They're constantly pushing, you know, the puck, you know, down your throat and action at the net, jamming your goalie. It's just a physical game against them. And then they're one of their best lines. You know, they score a lot of goals for that team, and they're really the engine of that team. So I think a lot of defensemen talk about that throughout the league.
Well, it's certainly been, interesting to see how things have evolved and see how quick players have gotten. I think that, teams have been doing throwback nights recently. I know there was one in Chicago a week or two ago. There was one in Philadelphia when you guys played against them, and they were showing the different fights and things on the Jumbotron, and just seeing guys like Riley Cote, you just don't see that in the game anymore. But, for you came into the league at such a young age, and you've been an all-star. You've really done and achieved so many different things. But now as a 28-year-old, you kind of have to settle into that leadership role. And, you wear a letter on your sweater now. The Hawks are going through a rebuild in which, you're the cornerstone of, and, you're seeing guys like Isaac Phillips and Alex Vlasic last season, and it's probably going to continue. So what's that like for you now to sort of take on that bigger brother mentor, like some guys potentially did for you when you were young? Obviously there's Caleb, but then there's 21-year-old Isaac Phillips, who I see it. He comes back to the bench and he looks to you, and these guys, they look to you. I know you're not yelling and screaming. That's not your style, but the players look towards you for that, support and encouragement or coaching or anything really.
Yeah, it's been definitely a transition. I'll say the last probably couple of years of my career, kind of transforming into that leader. I've played for some great captains, and Shea Weber when I came to the league, and then Nick Foligno in Columbus, and now Taser. It doesn't really get much better than that when it comes to leaders. And every guy had a different style of leadership, so that's been very interesting to see. But just trying to take bits and pieces of what they do, that was so great leadership-wise for the teams that I was on with them. When it comes to a guy like Philly, you can see that he's going to be a great player in this league. He's a big, strong guy. Even though he's so young, he can pass the puck very well. He's a great skater. I think he's going to be a great piece for this team for years to come. And along with, some of our other guys as well. But, anytime I see, Philly, you don't want to get in a guy's head too much. You kind of want to let them learn for themselves. But there are times, you say maybe make that pass a little bit quicker, or, if you look right, maybe that play is there left or something like that, just to try to give him tips and pointers. But, he's a very humble kid. Talking about Philly, he's a very humble kid. He wants to learn. He wants to be better. And I think, like I said, he's going to be a great player. He already is.
Seth, and that's great perspective, especially knowing, this speaks to your leadership skills as well, knowing that your words do carry weight on the younger players in the league and just kind of giving them their space to do their thing. I want to ask, pivoting a little bit, what do you think of jersey swaps? And I haven't, I don't see that. I certainly don't see that take place on the ice after NHL games. Is that something that actually goes on, or, is that something that you would be interested in? Is there anybody that you'd want to swap jerseys with? I'm sure there are, but why don't you think that's caught on at the NHL?
I'm not sure why it hasn't caught on. I guess, after the game, you just, whether you win or lose, we'll celebrate in the middle of the ice, and then, the other team's probably mad, so they just go right to their locker room. I'm not sure. I know a lot of sticks get swapped behind the scenes after games or before games. So, you can go to your trainer and be like, hey, can I ask, everyone in the league wanted a Yager stick, for example, when he played. That was the hardest stick to get. You couldn't get a Yager stick. You can ask your trainer to ask their trainer to get an Ovechkin stick or swap, something like that. So I know sticks go a lot more. I don't know how many jerseys these guys get in these other leagues and things like that, but I don't know why there's not many jersey swaps. I guess the guys don't want to sit in the middle of the ice and take their jerseys out in front of all the fans and swap it. I don't know. Different culture, I guess. Who knows?
Yeah. Before I ask you about your All-Star commercials, your previous acting debuts, I wanted to quick ask, when you mentioned Shea Weber, when you lived with him, when you first started, what was it like living with Shea and kind of what he's like behind the scenes as a young kid? Did you have expectations as his roommate?
Yeah. Well, he had a wife and 2 dogs at the time. He didn't have any kids at the time. But it was, he had a kind of, pretty big house at the time there in Nashville, and kind of had like my own little wing upstairs. So, we'd get back home from practice and we would chill, and then, he would kind of do his thing and I would do my thing, and I wouldn't try to bother him too much, with his wife and things like that. But, his wife was awesome, great cook, extremely nice, great person. And so for him to open his home up to me, as a 19-year-old, looking for leadership and looking for guidance, my first year in the league was pretty special to me.
Who was the best stick that you got? I'm like, I heard Chris's question, and so now I'm curious. Did you get Yager's stick?
No. Everyone in the league wanted Yager's stick. I couldn't get it. Trying to think who I have in the garage. I have a lot of older, like I have a Ray Bork stick, which is pretty cool, signed. That's probably my favorite stick that I have. So that's back when he played in Colorado. I think my dad may have got that one for me at the time. One of the greatest defensemen to ever play. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's certainly a valuable one, and it always probably will be. I'm sure one day you'll have it on the wall somewhere. But those are fun teams to watch, those Colorado teams. So I remember when Ray Bork got traded there and seeing those guys all to go together and win a Stanley Cup, and getting to play with Chris Bork, his son, who just got inducted into, I think they retired his number in Hershey. He was kind of an American League.
Really?
He was, Chris Bork was a star American League player, set all sorts of records and never quite made that transition as smoothly, but certainly a great family. But, this has been really, really, interesting to get to know you a little. I know we never really got into the Caleb subject, so I'll give you one quick question about Caleb. What's that like to play with your brother? I mean, to have one NHL in your household player is unbelievable. But then all of a sudden, your parents raise two kids who make the NHL. And I mean, I don't know if there's something in the water, if it's something in the nutrition. I mean, it really is incredible with when you think about, there's only been less than 8,000 people have ever done this in the history of the game. So, is it special still, or is it wear off a little bit? I mean, how incredible is it just to play with your brother at this level?
Yeah, it's extremely incredible. I think we take it for granted, to be honest, a little bit, because it hasn't happened that many times, and you don't really think about it every day, right now. And even when he was in Edmonton, to think about, wow, my brother's in the NHL, it doesn't really settle in unless you take a step back and look at the bigger picture of life. And being on the same team now, we have fun with each other. I think, say I go and make a mistake, I'll come back to the bench and he'll be like, maybe you should make that play next time. I'm like, thanks, man. And so when he goes and makes a play, I'm like, hey, just get that out, right? Just make a harder play there. And he'll be like, I'm not going to say it on air, but so we go back and forth a little bit, which is fun. And we're just trying to make each other better. And it's been that way since we were kids. Our parents always gave us the tools and to be successful growing up, which we're thankful for, and always give us the opportunity. And so we didn't want to take that for granted, and we wanted to work hard and earn respect as players.
Seth, I want you to answer this question as honestly as you can, but who wins one-on-one in basketball, you or Caleb?
I'll say I would win probably 8 or 9 times out of 10. If we're playing like games to 5, I'd win 8 games out of 10 for sure. I will say he can get hot from 3. He's got some weird thing going on that he just chucks threes up. And when he gets hot, it's crazy. He looks like he thinks he's Curry, but he's obviously not. But when push comes to shove, I can back him down into the paint and use my size a little bit more over him. It doesn't end well because he takes hard fouls. He's not going to let me get free buckets. So then it gets a little heated toward the end. But I usually come out victorious.
Is there anyone else in the locker room that you think could hold his own on the hardwood or even on the driveway?
We actually we did a Halloween party as a team. What was that? 2 months ago now. And there was a little basketball court area on the side of it, and so the guys were doing the free throw competition, and they were doing. I think I call it knockout, but it's called thunder or something.
Yeah.
Knockout,
And so, knockout, right? And Kaner actually's got a pretty good stroke. There's some guys with some decent game. Double A's got a good game. Domes as well. So there's some shooters on our team for sure.
Good stuff.
I can attest to Kaner being a good basketball player. Some driveway hoops in high school. He was always good at everything we would do away from the rink.
Yeah, he's got great form. I think he went 9 out of 10 on free throws. We did a free throw competition. He went 9 out of 10, so he was stroking it pretty good.
Really good.
Guy's good at everything,
Seth,
huh?
Yeah, some people, right? Listen, before we let you go, I want to run some rapid fire questions by you. I saw you doing this with Scott Powers of The Athletic the other day. I promise these will be different questions, but all right, you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Are you more of a couch potato or a social butterfly on a day off? You like to stay in or go out?
Couch potato.
College basketball or NBA?
NBA.
Do you have a favorite team?
I just like watching the good players, I think.
MJ or
like
LeBron?
If there's a good team on, then I'll go. Oh, sorry. MJ, LeBron, MJ.
If you could eat in one city, either Dallas or Chicago, for the rest of your life, which would you pick?
Oh,
Good one.
easy. Chicago.
Okay. I mean, Dallas, you've got good barbecue, you've got Tex-Mex. What's your
You do.
What do you like about Chicago? What's your favorite food in Chicago?
I just think there's just so many, like you can never try all the restaurants in Chicago. I feel like there's so many of them, and there's always new ones opening up, and you can go get steak. A lot of steakhouses, of course, or Italian. I haven't had Mexican in Chicago yet, to be honest. I guess I just haven't tried it anywhere, but I'm sure there's somewhere good.
It's out there. I recommend La Luna down in Pilsen if you ever have the mood or ever are in the mood. But it's Mexican food in Dallas is hard to beat. I will acknowledge that.
That's true. That's true.
Video games. Are you a sports video game guy? Are you a first person shooter guy?
I don't play anymore, but I was definitely a first person shooter. I was both actually. Growing up as kids, we would always play NHL or NBA against each other, or my brothers. But then I turned more into first-person shooter, probably.
And last thing, I know you in the past have liked to cook. Do you still like to cook?
I do. It's kind of when I'm feeling it a little bit now. Especially like mid-season. Sometimes you're tired and you're just like, it's so easy to get in the Uber Eats in that world.
In the vortex.
Yeah, exactly. And you're on it for 30 minutes trying to find out what's new on there.
It's 9 p.m.
Exactly.
9 p.m. and you haven't eaten, and you're like, all right, Chick-fil-A, whatever.
Exactly. Chick-fil-A, yeah. But yeah, I try to cook when I can. So after practice, if I'm feeling it to go to Whole Foods, and I'll just get dinner, and if not, then it's definitely an Uber Eats.
Do you have a go-to recipe? I know you've talked about your chicken parm in the past. Are you still a chicken parm guy? Have you moved on to something else?
I mean, yeah, I like chicken parm. It's kind of a hassle to make. It's definitely not like an everyday thing, of course. But I like cooking salmon or steak, just throwing it in the oven. Some potatoes and a veggie on the side, something simple. It's not too hard to cook, or it doesn't take too much time.
All right, well, Kaylee, Colby, I think we've taken up enough of Seth's time. Listen, Seth, we really appreciate this. It's been a lot of fun covering you this season, and for the 2 years you've been in Chicago. And congratulations once again on the All-Star berth of the fourth of your career. Many more to come in Chicago. We certainly hope. But good luck the rest of the season, and we look forward to following how everything goes down in Florida. Thanks again.
Perfect. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Our thanks once again to Seth Jones. Can't wait to watch Seth in the 2023 NHL All-Star Game down in South Florida. The Blackhawks are going to have some cameras following him around that week, so there will be a lot of great content coming out on behalf of the Blackhawks and Seth Jones's All-Star Week experience. So as we get into Sellies and Chirps now, where each of us bring a topic of discussion to the group and invite our co-host to either celebrate it or chirp it. We'll start with Colby Cohen, who appropriately has an All-Star Game related Selly or chirp.
Are we celebrating or are we chirping this whole retro phase that we're in? The NHL just released the All-Star Game jerseys. They're kind of a nod to 1994. The All-Star Game jerseys, except I think they gave sort of the reverse retro flair to it. Now, I understand why they wouldn't copy the jersey exactly, because then you have some fans that say, oh, I don't need to buy this jersey because I already have the one from 1994, albeit might fit a little differently and might have a little bit of a different material to it. So I don't know how you guys feel about this. Me personally, I celebrate this. I like this reverse retro phase that we're in all walks of life. I think so many things are coming back. I love the All-Star jersey, which is why I'm celebrating it. I've gotten a lot of text messages, so it's like maybe controversial. Some people say they think it's ugly. Some people like it. I'm celebrating it. Kaylee, I don't know how you feel about it.
I'm with you. I'm celebrating it. I love reverse retro. I love the nostalgia. I'm not a huge fan of the, everything coming back from Y2K. That was not a good look for a lot of people. So that's different. But 90s all day. That was a great time for everything, the look, the style, the feel. So these reverse retros I can totally stand behind. It's more so the Y2K that's just not, it's not good. It's not a good situation right now for a lot of people who are into that style. 90s, totally support it. I love the jersey. I think it's really cool. I want one.
I'm going to celebrate the jerseys. I think there's a Miami Vice look to them, which is appropriate given the location in Sunrise, Florida. So I think that's really cool. I'll be interested to see how the white looks on the ice in a recent game. That Buffalo Sabres game where the Sabres were wearing their reverse retros and it was basically white on white playing on ice on a white surface. That definitely poses a lack of contrast. Again, I like the classic looks, and I think there's certainly room to riff on that, but I think it becomes just a money grab when you go too far, and so I wouldn't like to see, I guess, any more than what we've already had. But an All-Star Game is a perfect format to do something that's a little bit out there or pushes the boundary creatively a little bit more. That was a good topic, Colby, and now to take it in a completely different direction, we go over to Kaylee.
Yeah, pivot. I was having breakfast with the Blackhawks director of security, Brian Higgins, and we both love sushi and we both love soy sauce. And I was thinking in my head, we both had our plates full of sushi, if I don't have soy sauce on my sushi, I will not eat the sushi, I don't think. And I never really thought about it before. It's one of my favorite foods. So my Selly or chirp is, if you have sushi, is it a must? It's not really a Selly, I guess, but is soy sauce a celebration? I have to have it or I will not eat the sushi? Or are you okay with eating sushi without soy sauce? Colby, why don't you take it?
Well, your Sellies and Chirps lately have been total hot button debate topics. It was the airplane.
That's the point.
It was the it was the airplane pet peeves, which probably got my heart racing pretty good. And then now this is an interesting one. Well, this was not this morning though, correct? Because you guys weren't eating sushi this morning for breakfast, right?
Yeah, I need to follow up on that. Were you having sushi for breakfast?
No. Oh, we were talking about it because we both had sushi for lunch, and I noticed Brian and I both really wanted more soy sauce. And so Brian and I were in the boat where he was like, honestly, that's a great question. I don't think I'd eat sushi if I didn't have soy sauce. And I was like, that's crazy. But I also won't eat it.
I just needed to clarify that. So here's what I would say. I would say mostly yes. I would agree with you, actually. Like, you need soy sauce. You got to be able to dip your sushi in soy sauce. But there are certain exceptions to that. There are certain sushi restaurants, namely one in Vancouver, which I know you guys are going to be in Vancouver shortly. Although I'm not. Are you doing the Western Canada trip, Kaylee? I think I think I saw on the scheduler in studio for that one. So Chris, I'll give you the name of that sushi restaurant in Vancouver. But there are certain exceptions where they might put some other type of sauce already on the sushi. It might have I don't know what any of those sauces are called, so I'm not even going to pretend to be
yum sauce.
They are just whatever sauce, right? And so, but you do need to have some sauce on sushi. So I'm going to stop rambling here and just agree with you, because I think generally speaking, yes.
Got it.
So this is a major chirp for me. And I mean, look, at the end of the day, all you're saying is you like soy sauce more than sushi. All right. I mean, let's just break it down.
No, they go together. It's not saying that. It's just saying that they go well together.
But if you're not going to have sushi without soy sauce, then I don't think you really like sushi.
Yeah, but there are certain foods that I like more with ketchup, and that doesn't mean I'm just going to eat ketchup. Or like I enjoy a hot dog better with ketchup. I enjoy a hamburger or a cheeseburger better with ketchup. Like
that's not what we're debating. But you would still eat a hot dog or a hamburger without ketchup, right?
And I could still eat the sushi, but it just wouldn't be as good.
But this is Kaylee is can't do it, right? Like if it doesn't, if it's not slathered.
Couldn't do it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, if it's this stark of an either or, like no soy sauce, I'm not touching it. I gotta chirp that, because first of all, I don't like soy sauce. It's just way too salty. And
I've soy sauce at my house before.
Not on sushi. What? No, I haven't.
Yeah, you have. I those pork chops that I made last time you came over for dinner had soy sauce on them.
That was a marinade. That was a marinade. Come on, that was a marinade.
Soy sauce.
For the invite.
Not in its like purest form.
What'd you say,
Not
Kelly?
like the Kikkoman bottle wasn't on the table. Okay. Anyways, sushi. I eat sushi for the fish. And the rice, and that combination, that texture. Soy sauce. Okay, like look, I if you want to put soy sauce on it, that's your prerogative. But drawing this line in the sand where you won't have sushi without soy sauce. That's crazy.
I find it essential, and I find it odd that you don't like soy sauce. So I'm going to keep an eye on that.
Kaylee, he's eating soy sauce at my house just because he didn't know it was soy sauce, and he told me. And I even told him when he said this to me, he was like, "Okay, next time you could drive 2 hours to come over for dinner. You're next time you're getting the invite, the pork chop night invite." But we're
having sushi.
Kaylee, I douse these things. I literally douse it in soy sauce and other things. And then Chris told me it was the best pork chop he ever had, which I don't believe because it wasn't that good. But he did eat the whole thing.
All right.
It was a really good pork chop. I didn't know there was soy sauce on there, so I am going to retract my comment there. But anyway, okay, that was a great discussion.
She always, Kelly, you've really been getting us going lately. You're
ping pong. I like to write down my thoughts.
Do you have a diary, a journal?
Not,
I'm imagining.
not a diary of my thoughts, but I do keep a notes page with things I want to bring up to you. All right, Chris.
Kaylee Chelio, stream of consciousness.
What do you got for us?
Yes. Okay. Here is more food for thought. Continuing the theme for Sellies and Chirps. Okay, so Kaylee's Sellie and Chirp, very thought provoking, and it got me thinking. Pizza with ranch. It's not quite the either or. Like, you won't have sushi without soy sauce. I'm not asking will you have pizza without ranch, but are we celebrating or chirping just the concept of pizza with ranch? Because I know some people that will plant that flag in the ground and, I mean, defend it very, very militantly. Pizza on ranch. And I just I want to ask you, Selly or Chirp, pizza with ranch or ranch dressing on pizza?
Colby, you look disgusted. I'll let you take this first.
You look disgusted.
The pizza man.
You look disgusted.
I am not a pizza and ranch or blue cheese. I don't really the only time I even will touch ranch or blue cheese is if I have a chicken wing in front of me that needs to be cooled down because I don't have a great tolerance for spice. And even that, I mean, I'm just not into the consistency of ranch or blue cheese. And when I see people dipping every bite, and I've seen it, and I know the people you're talking about that are total ranch on pizza, loyalists. It is not for me. I am chirping it. I am not into it. If your pizza needs ranch, find a better pizza place.
I'm in the same boat. I am definitely chirping it. Ranch is a very bold flavor. I've never liked it, and there's so many good toppings on pizza. There's different levels of like what you're allowed to do. Soy sauce and sushi, great, pretty important. But ketchup on steak to me is a no-go, and ranch on pizza is for me. That's not legit. Colby's right. I think you need to find better pizza then, or at least a better topping. I don't like the flavor of ranch at all, so that's not my jam.
Isn't the consistency of ranch kind of troubling? It's like, what is the consistency? It's like, it looks like somebody put glue into like a bigger bottle that you can see. Like, it just, I just can't. I can't do it. You love it, don't you, Chris? You probably love it.
You like it?
No. Actually, this is the best. This is the best thing that's happened on this episode because now we can be friends again. I also don't like ranch on pizza, and I think it just trashes pizza. I mean, have some respect for pizza. Okay, you're going to put ranch dressing on pizza. Now, having said that, as a Midwesterner, I feel like I'm going against my culture to disavow ranch dressing in this way, but I agree with Kaylee and Colby. I think there's something about ranch that is very off-putting, and again, if you need to put it on your pizza, you need better pizza. So glad we're all on the same page there and can end this Sellies or Chirps conversation on a high note.
Kaylee, you've been bringing the heat, though. Now you're really setting the bar kind of high for these, and you're very much turning these into like hot item debate topics, and
yes,
I kind of like it.
Thank you. You would have fun in my house. Maybe we'll host a dinner because that's all I do with my husband.
Sellies or Chirps?
Sellies, basically, I live in a Selly and Chirp environment in my house sometimes unintentionally, but I'm excited. Now I feel like I set the bar really high with this soy sauce situation, so I'm going to have to really think next week.
That was a hot button topic for sure. Well, this has been another fun episode. Again, our All-Star edition of the Blackhawks Insider podcast. We want to thank you, our listeners, first and foremost, for joining. Blackhawks.com for the latest and greatest Blackhawks-related content. And again, You want to have Blackhawks.com bookmarked for All-Star Week. There's going to be a ton of great stuff coming out, especially around Seth Jones. Brad Dollar, Southside Jake, our Blackhawks Insider podcast DJs. Thank you very much for the tunes. Trevor Bray, Jenna Rose, our producers. For my co-host, my all-star co-host, Kaylee Chelios, Colby Cohen, I'm Chris Vosters. We will talk to you next time on the Blackhawks Insider podcast.